It's spoiler-in time. Welcome, folks. This is the companion show to Cord Killers. On Cord Killers, we figure out what is there to watch, how do we watch it, all that stuff, and then we watch the shows and talk about them here. This week, we'll be talking about Miami Vice, a Season 2 episode called The Dutch Oven, Squid Game, Episode 7, and Hawkeye, Episode 3. I'm Tom Merritt. He's Brian Brushwood.
Heck yeah, but mainly I want to give a big shout out to the Jeff Foxworthy of this podcast, cordkillers.com, where he invites you to the Golden Corral and reminds you can have as much of you want of anything. Just go to hog heaven, and then we rate it. Pigs at a trough.
You might be a cord killer.
You might be a cord.
You might be a cord killer.
Okay, right.
So Brian, what order should we go?
Don't you dare. I get to ask you, what are we starting with, Tom?
Well, let's start with Hawkeye, episode 3 of season 1. This episode is entitled Echoes, in which Hawkeye and Kate Bishop get away from the bad people and then spend the rest of the episode in an apartment.
Tom.
Yes.
It was with great heaviness in my heart that I finally felt something when I watched this third episode, because it was great. The action set pieces were awesome. And it had this weird uncanny valley vibe where it's like, oh my God, is this good? And then I'd be like, no, it's not good. I'm like, but it's not bad. Yeah, mostly.
I felt like this was the episode where it started to feel like a movie, which the
anything?
other, like, and when I say that, WandaVision definitely felt like a movie. Even the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which I didn't love, felt like a movie. And the first 2 episodes felt like a Christmas special, honestly. Yep. And this episode felt like, okay, now we've started Hawkeye. Now we've started Kate Bishop. And honestly, I joked that they, got away from the bad guys and spent the rest of the time in the apartment. They don't. They go out on the bridge and have a fight as well, and a chase to get there. But there really isn't much happens in this episode, right? There's not a lot of plot moving forward, but there's a boatload of action, and the device of him losing his hearing because you have a deaf villain who criticizes him for using a hearing aid. Like, you should just man up and learn ASL, dude. Come on. I thought was genius in allowing that dynamic between Kate Bishop and Hawkeye to evolve in a way that I wouldn't have thought to tell the story that way, where Hawkeye just can't hear Kate Bishop. And you have multiple takes on that, including a very heartwarming one where she has to write down what his son is saying to him, and he has to try to kind of pretend to react to what his son is saying.
That's an okay moment. I think it's undercut a bit by the fact that in the first 2 episodes, they imply that he lost his hearing over the last few years during all of his adventures as an Avenger. I think it would be more interesting if more canonically, per the comic books, he was always a little bit deaf and wrestling with it.
You know what? I didn't even notice that. And maybe it's because I never read the comic books, so it didn't jump out. I forgot they even said he lost his hearing because of superhero stuff.
And they don't say it. What they say is like, oh, you have hearing aids. Why? And then they just show a bunch of scenes of explosions. And it's like, well, it doesn't read as he's been coping with a disability and that's why he became super brilliant with his eyesight or whatever, which is what
whereas
the
our
comics were
villain
about.
very clearly is like, grew up without hearing, just always been that way.
Right. I will say, oh boy, was I happy with the number of arrows that hit bodies. I was like, that's a hand, that's gross, that's a leg, that's gross, that's a torso, that's a shoulder, I was happy with all the arrows that hit people.
What about the USB arrow?
I was happy that they drew a halo around the fact that trick arrows are silly. And then they let them be silly to no point outside of to say they are silly. And I did love the, now keep in mind, I tried to explain to Bonnie, the one part of this show that I've not yet gotten on board with is somehow the titular character is my age and demographic, and yet they've managed to somehow make me not like the show so far. It's about somebody my age and my demographic.
You're like, I see a 50-year-old white guy.
Right.
I should feel represented by Hawkeye.
Right.
And you don't.
Yet I don't. And it's like, I'm even watching it with the closed captioning on because I don't want to miss anything. And yet somehow they're screwing it up so bad. As a matter of fact, going to the end of this episode, they haven't said it yet. We're going to have to wait through it in the next episode, but the mere fact that evil stepdad has the sword out and then credits roll tells me finally you're going to make it clear that evil stepdad isn't evil and he's actually a cool guy and we're going to like him.
Yeah. I think you're right. Because what happened this episode in multiple ways is what we're talking about, where they went from kind of a Christmas special feel to a movie feel, including the tracksuit villains, which were comical. In the first 2 episodes, I didn't mind them being comical, but they were comical. Became real once you introduced their leader, and it's like, and yes, they are still comical, but you have a much more complex. I mean, I keep calling her a villain, but she's more complex than just a villain, which is good. That's what Marvel does.
Certainly an adversary, right?
Yeah,
but they were.
You know why she's doing what she's doing. For sure. And you sympathize with it.
Tracksuit people are portrayed as clowns in the first 2 episodes, but it's only after we get some legitimate fight scenes that I feel like it's earned the right to Grand Theft Auto 5 style call out what clowns the tracksuit guys are. Like it's what's it called? Like just a bro moving or need a bro moving or something like that.
Right.
Like in the same way that I forgive all of that in Grand Theft Auto 5 because of the brutality of the natural gameplay, you have to have that saltiness to make that sugary sweet crap go down.
Yeah. Good stuff. I enjoyed it. There's not a lot to talk about plot-wise because it's just them getting away. And pulling up, and that tip off of like, aha, we're gonna find out what's going on with the stepdad next.
Yes, although I do feel like we should give a nod to. I put a letter in here. Somebody wrote in saying that they were absolutely enraged by the whole LARPer thing in the previous episode. They couldn't get over the fact that the New York City firefighter would go into somebody's destroyed apartment and steal one of the things left over. To me, this is what Nikki says. There's no difference between that and stealing Nana's pearl necklace. WTF, a hero stealing from a hero? That needed some other plot point, which I don't know how we walked right past that, but you're right. That's a pretty awful thing for a firefighter to do, is to loot the husk of a building he puts out.
Maybe it wasn't a real firefighter. It was a costume.
He was definitely a real LARPer.
He was cosplaying as a firefighter when he was the firefighter.
I don't remember the show very well.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I feel like I thought of this and had an explanation, and I cannot recall. So I'm gonna have to go with you, Nikki, and say like, yeah, that does sound wrong. But if anybody, maybe I'll go back and rewatch it. But if anybody else is like, no, here's why it was okay, let us know. Because yeah, the way Nikki puts it, it definitely sounds wrong.
Yeah, like the only thing worse than looting a husked out place is to go on social media and brag about what you got at the looted out husk. It's amazing.
All right. Any other thoughts on Hawkeye 103?
I really liked the big action sequence, the whole car chase and all. But it was very funny to me that scene has both really, really, really impressive actual stunt driving, right? There's that great long 360 shot.
Yeah.
And then some of the worst green screening I've ever seen on any of this Marvel stuff.
Yeah.
It is so back and forth, and it's so strange because the stunt work is incredible. They do a lot of very impressive cinematography in that sequence. And then either just because of the nature of it, maybe because it's a series and they need to make it cheaper, but the rest of the green screen stuff around that sequence was kind of shockingly bad.
Well, and plus on top of that, you had that classic comedic element of real danger, real stakes, real good action set pieces, somebody who doesn't know what trick arrows they're firing. And on top of that, that comedic layer of repeating after what she says, everything she says.
They're doing good back and forth. Yeah.
It was really good. Which I mean, is if anybody who saw last week, that is a harsh 180 I'm pulling on this.
Yeah.
Much like he did in that catalog.
Quite a bit of a stunt drive there with your opinion. All right, that's Hawkeye season 1, episode 3. Let's move on.